Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders despite the ones they hate. And in today's episode, we've got screaming soccer moms, fast food idiots, greedy bosses, all getting taught lessons they won't ever forget. So yeah, sit back, relax, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. What seems like a lifetime ago, when I was 18 years old, I coached indoor soccer at the local YMCA. It was a co-ed league, and the ages were 6 to 8 if memory serves me well. My team comprised of varying degrees of skill and interest. One of the rules was that there was a free substitution in a game. That just means that you can pull kids in and out of the game when there's action going on. I also tried to have the kids play equal amounts of time. On to the story. We were maybe halfway through our season, and by this time, I had gotten to know the kids I coached pretty well. Most of the kids I would leave in for about 3 minutes. One boy and one girl I would leave a little bit more because they were pretty good. And then there was a boy named Sam. I would only leave him in for at most 90 seconds, usually closer to 75 seconds. Despite this, over the course of a game, he played almost as much as everyone else. The difference was negligible. That said, we're still in the first half and I pull him out like normal. And that's when I hear some lady screaming saying, "Let my boy play. Stop taking him out. I know the rules and I'm talking to the sports director." I guess that's her equivalent of talking to the manager. I try my best to ignore her and keep coaching, but her yelling never ceases. Other parents are looking, but they're not saying anything yet. This has gone on for about 5 minutes, and I can't take it anymore. This shrill, entitled mom has broken me, and that's when I scream, "Fine, I'll leave him in longer." And leave him in I did. Almost as if on cue, just past 90 seconds, Sam loses all interest in the game and he starts chasing an imaginary tail. At 100 seconds, he continues chasing his tail and he starts barking and doing cartwheels. At about 2 minutes, he pulls his shirt over his head and he plays his belly like drums. And that's when I hear, "Take him out, you idiot." I looked down the line and I made eye contact with her and I just smiled and I took him out. It was a short but sweet encounter. The kid just had the attention span of a goldfish. Listen guys, ignoring mom's entitlement, this is such a cute story, isn't it? Just a kid being a kid. I only wish OP left the boy in there for longer, especially when mom made that rude comment. Like, making rude comments is oftentimes the worst thing you can do when trying to get what you want, like this next Karen. This happened a few years ago. I was working for a famous chicken fast food place and the store was in a food court. One night, I was working, and this particular customer had ordered a chicken burger and a large fries. About 15 minutes after making the initial order, this person comes up to me complaining that his fries were way too salty and he wanted some new ones. I said, "Sure thing, sir. Can I have your fries so I can throw those out and replace them?" Now, we were required to ask the manager to approve all refunds, but when it was busy and someone was complaining about fries, it was just easier to throw the fries away and replace them. It's not as if we're replacing a 21-piece chicken box. So the customer hands me the box, and there was probably like 10 to 15 fries left in the box. That's when I say to him, "Sir, you've eaten nearly the whole box." He then says, "Well, I was hoping they would get less salty as I ate them." I respond, "I can't replace these." He then says, "Yes, you can. There's fresh ones right behind you, dummy." Now, I didn't appreciate being called that out of nowhere, so I just say, "No worries, I'll just get the manager to process that for you." Now, a bit about my manager is he loves dealing with troublesome customers and he doesn't give in so easily to their demands. So I call my manager over and he listens to this customer's story about the salty fries. The manager also argues that there's only 10 to 15 fries left, and if he had brought the whole box back, we could have given him a new large fries. Anyway, this customer starts getting louder about his crappy fries and how it costs us just pennies to fix his problem. He starts screaming, saying, "Just replace my fries with less salty ones, idiot. Don't make this into something it's not." It's at this point, my manager looks at this irate customer. He tips the fries onto the bench and he counts them. He then turns around and he counts out the same amount of French fries into a new box and hands them back to the customer. The guy looks absolutely stunned and he just turns around and walks off, while I just walk to the back of the store in a fit of giggles at my manager's malicious compliance. And what a malicious compliance that was. Like, it is always nice to know that you have a manager that has your back, especially when dealing with customers like this. And Ovi's boss counting out 10 fries when the guy wanted a full, fresh order is absolutely a checkmate move. Like, I've worked in fast food before, and I'll never understand when someone eats like 99% of something and then demands a refund. And what's worse than people like that is somebody who thinks they know better than the workers. Listen to this next post. So I'm not exactly proud of this one because I can kind of see where the customer came from, but I think those of you who have dealt with condescending customers before can appreciate it for what it was. I supervised a mom-and-pop restaurant for several years that dealt specifically with shrimp and fish. Outside of cleaning and prepping the stuff, the main deal was cooking it in several big old fryers. It's involved work, but it's not hard work. Just stick the basket of food in the fryer, set the timer for 3 minutes, and when it comes out, bag it and give it to the customer. It's easy work, though it does get a bit complicated on a busy day like a Friday, where we do anywhere between 1 to 1.3K during a 6-hour shift, or maybe 1.5 to 1.7K if it was really busy. That's a normal busy Friday. When it's Lent season, business would boom significantly. We'd do like 5,000 to 7,000 during the Friday shifts, so yeah, it was busy. When it's that busy, you can't exactly rely on timers as much, because there's so much food going in and out of the fryers. The temperature fluctuates, so you gotta eyeball it. I'll have food burning at 2.5 minutes, or some food taking up to 4 minutes to look right. So here's where the malicious compliance comes in. During a Lent Friday night dinner rush, we get hundreds of people coming into a shop that's probably smaller than a middle-class living room. I'm talking like the waiting area on the other side of the counter was probably 20 feet by 7 feet, so it can get pretty cramped. I have my register person taking the orders and making bags and pushing them along the line, while my weigh table people can weigh out the food so I can start cooking them. When the order's done, I'll shove it in a bag and I'll yell the name or the order, and somebody in the crowd will come grab it and be on their way. It's a very intimate setup. So I got the counter full of 20 plus bags, each bag with a different order, and this one bag gets to me and it said, "Cook shrimp for an extra minute," or something to that effect. Now, like I said, the fryers cook funny when there's that much food going in and out. So using my years of shrimp frying experience, I extrapolate in my head what the food should look like if cooked for that long under normal circumstances, and I cook the food until it looks like that. So I pull the food up and I hear ahem from behind me. I take a look and this lady apparently followed her bag down the line. She waited for me to drop the food and she set her own timer. She then says, with a crappy gotcha attitude while looking at her timer, "Yeah, you need to cook that for an extra 45 seconds. You're not doing your job properly." At this point, her food was already looking too done, but she interrupted my flow and she gave me attitude, so I blurred out, "Oh, okay," and set the timer for 45 seconds and I put it on the counter. I bag some other people's food, and that's when I hear the lady behind me again, apparently with a little less teeth to her words this time. She says, "Oh, I think it's done now." I grabbed my timer I'd set right in front of her. I looked at it and I yelled with an equally condescending, crappy gotcha attitude, "Oh, but you still have 17 seconds left." and I smacked it down and I waited until the timer went off. 17 seconds can feel like a long time in those kinds of situations. Finally, the timer goes off. I grab her food and it looked burnt. I bagged it up and I gave it to her and I say, "Here you go, miss. Enjoy the rest of your day." She muttered a thank you and she walked off, and my coworkers and customers had a bit of a laugh about it. I never got a complaint though. Now don't get me wrong, I do get it. As a customer, I can be finicky sometimes too, but the problem is I was honoring her request. I do feel bad, but at the same time, I don't appreciate anyone giving me attitude, and I've never been a customer is always right kind of person anyways. Reading this post, I'm honestly surprised Karen didn't throw a bigger fit and she actually admitted defeat and walked off. But what else can you do at that point but to walk away, right? Again, I was expecting a full tantrum at that point, and this person comments, "I did have a guy say he wanted his pizza well done, and when I did, he complained to the manager about me burning it, and now I'm the bad guy. I wanted to cut him with my pizza knife." Again, some people are the absolute worst, aren't they? And this next OP shares a tantrum gone wrong, where a Karen thinks she knows best. So I work as a long-term care biller. I do pharmacy billing for nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So any meds they get, I bill. My company's contracted with the long-term care facilities, and we provide medications to people in long-term care. On to the story. I've been working in this field for 16 years. The company I work for does something that's absolutely unheard of in pharmacy billing. They care about their patients. So if your insurance drops a copay of $20, but the at-cost price is only $5, we charge you the $5. We give you the lower price, and that's really rare in my field. Most pharmacies are out to F everyone over. My company actually gives you the better deal. So that said, here comes Karen. I get a call and she says, "Hi, I'd like to talk about my mom's bill. She's at so-and-so nursing home." I reply, "Okay, what's your customer number?" I pull up the customer number and she says, "You didn't run this through my mom's insurance." I respond, "Let me check this out." There's a pause, and I respond, "Okay, I saw that your copay was actually higher than the at-cost rate, so we dropped the charge down so it's cheaper for you." This is when Karen says, "I pay for insurance and I expect insurance prices." I respond, "Of course, but when we can charge you the lesser price, we do that. We try to." She then cuts me off and she says, "I don't give an F about your prices. I want it ran through the insurance for taxes purposes." I tell Karen, regardless of that, we can send you an itemized tax paper to show what you paid. We're just trying to give you the lower. She then stops me and says, "I want this ran through the insurance. This is ridiculous of you. You aren't billing my insurance." I respond, "We did, but our at cost gives you a lower price, so we charged you the lower price." It's at this point, she screams at me and says, "I'm effing done with this. Bill the effing insurance." I let Karen know, "Your bill is $75. If I bill your insurance, there are some tier 3 and 4 meds, which are the highest copays. I'm talking $75 plus. They will raise your bill." She then says, "It will not, and I expect you to rebill my account to the insurance and mail me a new statement." There's no winning with her, so I respond, "Yes, ma'am." I end the call and I rebill the account. Her bill goes from $75 to $396. She gets her new bill a week later. She calls back and she loses her lid, of course. Thankfully, my boss backed me and he told her that since it's been over 30 days since the meds were dispensed, we can't reverse the claims, so she's stuck with the bill. So here's the bottom line. If someone tells you that they're giving you the best deal, take it. So I've been a nanny for several years now, and for the most part, I've worked with lovely, reasonable families. I have contracts for every family that guarantees the hours I work, meaning if a family goes on vacation, I'll still get paid because I'm technically available to work, but they chose not to use my services. Think of it like a gym membership where you pay regardless of whether you've been to the gym in a month or not. This is standard on nanny contracts. Another bit on my contract is called the nanny share. So if two families want to combine for the day, each of them pays 2/3 of my regular pay rate. I get paid a bit more for watching more kids, and they save a little on only paying a portion of what they would have paid. This one family, Ken and Karen, are wealthy and they're extremely stingy. Their kid's Bob. Henry is an extremely sweet, generous single dad who lost his husband a few years ago and dotes on his kid Steve. Karen and Ken's family went to Hawaii 3 weeks ago, and per my contract, I was to be paid as usual. Before they left, they asked if I could come and watch Bob the Sunday after they returned, so they could recover and rest. I agreed, and my hours were set at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. that Sunday. They went on the trip, and everything was wonderful, and they texted me when they landed, saying they'll see me at 8 a.m. The next day, when I was about to head out the door at 7:30 a.m., I received a text saying that Bob was just waking up, so I should show up at 8:30 instead. After the day of nannying, Karen asked if I would stay past my regular hours during the upcoming week, so they could have 2 date nights. I agreed, and Karen said she would reimburse me for all the extra hours at the end of the week, since it would be easier to make one payment, which was totally fine with me. The week finished, and I end up staying an extra 8 hours total for the 2 date nights. I asked Ken to pay me 16 hours, but he said he had to talk to Karen first to double check the hours, and he would pay me shortly. When I got home, I received a text from Karen saying, "Hi OP, thank you so much for covering us the past few weeks. Ken and I are feeling refreshed and the show was hilarious. Since we were in Hawaii, you were paid for an entire week while you weren't working. We don't think this is quite fair as it's a large sum of money, so we'd like to apply some of those hours to your babysitting today and yesterday. We'll pay you for 8 hours instead." Seeing that text, I was furious. I screenshot the part of my contract that plainly states that I would be paid for any hours that their family was on vacation, and I reminded her that it was in violation of contract. She reluctantly agreed, and I texted it would be a total of 16 hours. Karen instantly replied, and she went off, texting, "On Sunday, we asked you to come in at 8:30, not at 8. We're already being generous and we're paying you for the holiday we took. We expect you to track your hours better next time. This is unacceptable. You need to be as accurate as possible with the hours we're paying you. We'll pay you for 15.5 hours. Now, dear friends, this was a difference of $12.50. I was going to screenshot the part of my contract that said that any rescheduling needed a 24-hour notice, but instead, I went nuclear. Their son Bob has been tagging along with Steve and me to music class and soccer twice a week, outside of Karen's regular contracted hours since January. Karen's never offered to pay for those hours, but Henry was fine with paying his full rate for those hours, because Steve was having trouble making friends at school and he'd become close to Bob. I chose not to say anything about the slight bump in pay, because I loved watching them play together, but malicious compliance time. As Karen stated, I needed to be as accurate as possible. I calculated all the hours that Bob's joined us since January, 6 hours a week, multiplied by 18 weeks, and the total amount they owed was almost $2,000. And then, in the group chat with Karen, Ken, and Henry, I said, Karen stated the importance of me tracking the hours as accurately as possible. I took it upon myself to double check everything, including the share hours, and thank goodness I did. I didn't realize that we've forgotten to track all the hours that Bob joined us for soccer and music. Henry, I'm so sorry. Karen actually owes you quite a bit of money. If my calculations are correct, they owe X amount to you and to me." Henry replied, and he said, "Karen and Ken. I'm so disappointed to hear that OP hasn't been compensated properly this entire time. I don't need my hours to be refunded for those hours because I wanted Steve to continue his playdates, but you need to pay OP's portion immediately. I was afraid of overstepping, but I'm glad I did it. I got a huge chunk of money that I wasn't expecting, and now I'm on the hunt for my next nanny family. I'll be putting in my 2 weeks notice with Karen and Ken as soon as I do." What a compliance that was, and I know to Karen and Ken, it's probably peanuts for them to shell out that extra chunk of money, but what's really priceless is OP in all of this. And this person says, "If there's anything I've learned from being a parent for the past 10 years, it's that you do not nickel and dime your babysitter, nanny, or caregiver ever, and be generous. You pay them well, pay them on time, treat them well, and they will always show up, especially if you're fortunate enough to afford it." Long ago, while in grad school, I worked at a big box electronics store doing this commission sales gig. The job wasn't all that bad, but as with all big box retailers, they really wanted you to push their lame personal service contracts, which was their fancy word for an extended store warranty, where the real money is made, as they say. This place was a way for me to make money on the side while finishing the last leg of school, so I didn't bother with warranties all that much. I did mention them, but I wasn't pushy with customers. And then, a perfect storm hit that allowed me to not only make some money, but a boatload of money, all the while having some fun at the store's expense. Perfect storm ingredient number 1. Management starts heavily hinting that they were going to start writing up salespeople if they didn't start selling X amount of warranties per week, and getting X amount of people to sign up for their stupid store credit card. Perfect storm ingredient number 2. This store had a generic low-price store brand of networking hardware. Well, turns out the company's buyer and some other management people had taken massive kickbacks from this low-price brand to keep them in the store, which resulted in a crap storm. The buyer and anyone else in on the scandal was fired. In addition, prices were slashed and commissions were raised to get this brand out of the store as fast as possible. So thinking about my new weekly goal and wanting to be a good worker, I start selling warranties more aggressively with the following speech to the customers. I would say, "So I know you haven't heard of this brand compared to your Netgears and your Linksys, but think of it like this. You can buy this router that does the same job for $20, get a $10 warranty, save $40 because they're having a fire sale, and if it craps out, then you can come back and they have to replace it." The real beauty is they're getting rid of this line, so they have to replace it with the next best competitor, which means you get a full price brand name item for the $10 it costs you for the warranty. Surprisingly, a lot of people saw the logic of this and they bought their fire sale tech along with the warranty. Eventually, my boss, who was a pretty cool guy, calls me over to ask why my warranty numbers were suddenly so high. I liked the guy, so I explained exactly what I was doing. He just stared at me for a moment, and then he said, "You shouldn't be selling a $10 warranty on a $10 item we're discontinuing." That's when I explained I was just following upper management's orders. Everyone hated upper management, so he just smiled and shook his head. I just kept selling warranties until the fire sale was over, and I had some of the best weekly commission numbers I ever got at that store, thanks to the fire sale. And the real kicker is the store manager who threatened writing people up if they didn't hit warranty targets came over a couple of times. She congratulated me on all the great work I was doing. She could see the numbers, but apparently my boss forgot to mention to her why that number suddenly spiked. So many moons ago, I was part of a malicious compliance, so here it goes. The summer before I entered high school, the Ministry of Education decided to change the standardized testing that they used for entry to universities. It had happened in the past, and usually it took a year to implement changes. But this plan was really complicated. It needed 2 years to implement. Laymen like you and me can't comprehend. It's called throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And guess what class got to be the lab rats? If you guessed mine, you're right. We started school with only a vague idea of what the changes will be until mid-October, and then we learned that the first changes will be implemented on the midterms. The midterms used to be 2 weeks and provided 40% of the final grade. But the new plan was a full month and count for only 20% towards the final grade. Also, a major player for the malicious compliance was our literature teacher, who let's call her Karen. Now, I have to admit, she was good at her subject. The problems in her teaching came from prejudice and preconceptions. In a 25-people class, she only worked with 4 or 5 of them, and to be specific, it was kids from upper-class families or the best part of town. The rest of us were just background for her. A few parents did complain, but due to reasons we learned later, she was always engaging during inspections and she kept her job. Cue malicious compliance time. It's midterms. It's one of the new tests, and it's creative writing. Now, as I said, this was one of the new tests. The ministry had set general instructions for the test, but they left the specifics to each school. So for this one, Karen set the specifics. The general instructions for this one asked from the teacher to pick a book from the syllabus, and the pupil to write at least 800 words from the point of view of one of the characters. Karen had an obsession for epics, so she chose the Iliad, expecting everyone to pick a hero. Everybody did, except 3 of us, who I'll call JK, Indy, and myself. I don't know if we wanted to rebel against the system or against Karen, but the 3 of us didn't follow the norm. Now, JK was a really good student, but had the usual trouble in Karen's class. She chose Andromache, the wife of Hector, and she described the last day of Hector from Andromache's point of view. My friend Indy is a mythology buff and absolutely hated Karen's teaching of the material. He picked Zeus. He basically wrote Zeus's point of view, noticing every female named in the Iliad and his horniness. Me, I chose Cassandra. She had the gift of prophecy, but the curse of never being believed. I went the whole point of view of being we're all doomed and never believed. The results came out and we were the only ones that failed. We got 8, 7, and 7 out of 20 because, according to Karen, we completely missed the point of the test. But here's the aftermath. Unbeknownst to everyone except the principal, the ministry had sent instructors to grade the test independently of the teachers. They published their grades, and 3 particular tests have huge grade discrepancies. So one misty morning, all 3 of us are called to the meeting room. Inside is our principal, a clearly fuming Karen, and 3 people we don't know. They introduce themselves as part of the Ministry of Education. They want us to explain why we chose those characters. We all said, well, it said any character, so we chose one we liked. Every time we said that, they glanced at Karen. At the end, they thanked us, and they told us that their grade will go towards our final grade. After that, Karen had inspectors dropping on her unexpectedly. As I said in the beginning, she had passed the local ones because of something she did. She was having an affair with the assistant director of the local education department, and he always notified her before the inspection. Now, they came directly from the ministry, and she was always unprepared. She was allowed to finish the school year, and then she was dismissed. The ministry took a year and a half to figure out the system. We were the first class to officially take the new standardized test. creative writing was part of the literature exam. JK became a journalist and a writer, and Indy became an archaeologist. And as for me, well, I'm in here. I just love a good story when students get together to get back at a nasty Karen teacher. And that ending, like who knew she was going to get fired? But that's karma though. It's just so funny that she tried to fail OP and the two others because in her opinion, they missed the point. Well, unbeknownst to her, she failed because she missed the point of teaching. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/I-don't-work-here-lady, where psycho Karens are mistaking regular Joe Schmoes as employees. And the stories are absolutely wild. Go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.